Hello, Power fans. It's Mathonical, and you're joining me for round 4 with Enchantment Control. Our opening hand is unfortunately not a keepable one. We don't have a green source, and it's very clunky, so we're just going to ship this one back. Taking a look at our second hand, this one is completely keepable. We've got 3 mana sources, ability to cast everything, and yeah, we're just going to go ahead and keep this one. Lots of digging potential, too. Looking at our top card, let's see, the Desire. This would be good if we're going up against like a Stompulist or something, if we knew that's what we're against, but since this is game 1 and we don't know what our opponent is going to be on, I think it's best for us to send this one to the bottom. We basically just want some more land drops, just make sure we're casting everything off of our Kruphix's Insight, so yeah, we'll just send this to the bottom. Alright. Start with the tapped land. Next turn we've got the Fertile Ground, so things are pretty good there. And it looks like we're playing against Elves today. We're just going to, even though we drew a tapped land, we're going to go ahead and get the Fertile Ground online. Basically, this is going to give us 3 mana sources for next turn. So we can play Kruphix's Insight or anything else. I'm going to be stepping through this one because I have had a few errors with this replay file, so I'm hoping by stepping through it we might be able to avoid those. So just bear with it. I am a little sad to see the Priest of Titania, no way of exiling it at the moment. That can allow for some pretty explosive turns. Although they do have basically 2 forests and 2 other mana elves, so I wouldn't really delay them that much. We managed to get 3 good hits here, so that sounds good to me. And we get to play our land drop. We would have really liked a Pestilence there, because that would basically clean up the board very nicely. But we can afford to wait a little bit on getting it. The board state's not too crazy yet. Basically what we don't want to see here is Distant Melody or anything that's going to draw them a lot of cards. So this looks pretty good so far. The Well-Wishers mean this is likely going to be a very long game if they start activating them. Basically, all that life gain means that our Pestilence win plan is a long way off. Letting the Elvish Vanguard get bigger, it would be nice to get like a Crystallization or something on that to keep a Pestilence around, but I'd rather not risk it, and especially when they have a longbow, they just be able to put the longbow on it. So this turn, drawing a land is very nice. We're just going to try and play our Abundant Growth, just to draw our extra cards, and then we're just going to use the Journey to Nowhere. So let's make sure this steps through. Pestilence is a very nice thing. This is where it's been breaking a lot. And it looks like we're going to make it through. For some reason that likes to glitch out the replay system. Alright. So we're going to journey the Elvish Vanguard. This does mean that if we play the Pestilence and take it for 1, we are going to lose our Pestilence, but since our opponent had no cards in hand last turn, I'm not too worried about that. So as long as no Distant Melody or anything like that comes down right now to refill their hand, I'm feeling pretty good. And nothing happened, so this means we basically have to drop our Pestilence and feel pretty good about it. We'll be able to just activate it for 1, and that's going to be really good here. I realize now that I probably should have waited until my end step to use it, because then that would have forced our opponent to not be able to play any creatures next turn. So, just something that I was a little sloppy on right there. Probably won't come back to matter. Basically, our hand is looking pretty good. We're just going to cash in a Kruphix's Insight to try and dig down for some other stuff. Only 1 Journey to Nowhere, but it does get 5 lands out of the way. No big deal. We do got to be a little careful that we don't run out of cards in our library. That is a real way that we could lose right now. And it's possible that our opponent is holding some creatures in hand just so we can't play another Pestilence. And here we're just going to use the Oblivion Ring to get rid of the Viridian Longbow. I don't want anything happening with that. And we'll get the Protective Sphere down as well. That's going to shut off any kind of really big attacks out of nowhere. I'm pretty sure these decks don't play Mob Justice main board, but that'll protect us from that as well if they did. And here we're just, like, it's a bit risky to use the Kruphix's Insight. We're really putting ourselves behind on cards, but we're just going to use it and try and pick up some cards. I would like to start getting more land drops, and there is a very good card to get, the Quiet Disrepair. Now we just got to somehow use our last 2 Pestilences to win the game. Huntmaster is a very nice card for our opponent to draw. It does mean that we need to find a Pestilence or remove it immediately. Thankfully, we do have multiple ways of removing it. Although, now that we know that our opponent is willing to play some Huntmasters, our long-term game plan here is to try and get a Pestilence and then basically Recumbent Bliss one of them. It is possible that our opponent might play another, another Elvish Vanguard at some point and start making it big. That would be another excellent target to put Recumbent Blitz on and to get our Pestilence down. So right now it's just a lot of draw go. We're trying to play as fast as possible because we don't want to be too far below on time as well, since we do have to win one more game after this. Because we're already down on 3 minutes, and yeah. Our opponent is starting to get some stuff on the board, but I'm not going to use a Bliss or Crystallization on that. We're getting enough life that the damage doesn't really matter, and if they're going to be able to play a Distant Melody at some point, while that would suck, it's not the end of the world. They did play another Huntmaster, and since we still don't have a Pestilence to take care of all the tokens, I'm going to get rid of it again. And we'll continue to take our 1 damage, no big deal. Elvish Vanguard, that is perfect. That is something we want to drop a Recumbent Bliss on. So we're going to do that right now. And there we go. Alright, so we don't have any more ways of dealing with Huntmasters, so that's the card we don't want to see. And we would very, very much like to see a Pestilence at some point. But we'll continue to gain our life in the meantime. Heliod's Pilgrim is quite nice, but unfortunately we don't have any win conditions we can search with it. We just have Quiet Disrepairs, which will keep the game going longer, and little chip damage won't matter so much. There is another Huntmaster, so now there is potential for us losing, especially with the Distant Melody. Our opponent was able to draw a bunch of cards, so we do need to find our Pestilence at some point, and we're 44 cards in and still haven't found a second one. The odds have not been playing in our favor today, but... Ooh, a second... There we go, they played it. Yeah, we were lucky enough to be able to get rid of the last one, but now there's another one, so yeah, it's well, here we go. We gotta just we are gaining enough life that we should be able to hold on until we get our Pestilence. Normally that Timberwatch Elf would be able to close out the game rather quickly, but since we do have our Protective Sphere online, it does mean that we'll just take 1 damage from each creature no matter what. And our opponent is using more Distant Melodies, so... Well, that's that. Essence Horn, that's not something I wanted to see. Basically, that means they're going to be able to start getting some incremental life. And our win condition is the Pestilence, so like one of the two. And we don't want them to have too much life, because we do need to somehow win in a number of turns. Another Oblivion Ring is somewhat nice. It means we get to basically take out the Huntmaster. I'm also using the Faith's Fetters on the Timberwatch Elf, because I don't think there's going to be a better target, and it will kind of delay things a little bit. Lead the Stampede. Basically, we're just going to be taking a bunch of little chip shots non-stop for a while. Elvish Vanguard is going to be fine. We can drop a Crystallization on that one. And then that way there's going to be 2 creatures they have on their side that we can keep alive to keep our Pestilence around. Well, starting to play some Timberwatch Elves, that does make sense, but I don't think our opponent yet knows that the Protective Sphere is going to be able to protect us from that. And yeah. We're just going to let our opponent do the Elf thing and play a lot of Elves. So I'm just going to block something here. They're going to have to use a Timberwatch Elf, which they don't have available at the moment, so we're just going to eat the 1 free creature. Going to gain our 7 life. The Protective Sphere is fine. I'm not going to play it. I'm not really afraid of any enchantment removal. That's not something Elves play main deck. They're continuing to play a ton of creatures and gain incremental bits of life. So here they're making their very large attack. Basically they didn't attack with everything, and I do go and block one of the Elvish Mystics. And so basically they start using the Timberwatch Elves to pump up a bunch of different dudes. Now, that does make sense, except now we just get to use 4 mana, 4 green mana, very specifically, to Protective Sphere the creatures that have been pumped, and yeah, we take very little damage. We're just going to throw that Desire on the Nettle Sentinel just to reduce the damage we're taking by a little bit. And we are trying to play as quickly as possible, because thankfully we are within just a few seconds of our opponent right now. Our opponent this time does use a Timberwatch Elf to kill our Heliod's Pilgrim, which does make sense, because we're just going to be able to use the Protective Spheres on the creatures they pumped otherwise, as you can see there, and we just take a handful of damage, gain a ton of life back. It's fairly even right now, and our opponent ends up just skipping. They realize they probably don't have winning chances, and they skipped last turn just trying to save some time. It was probably just a quick F6 error. And they're starting to make their attacks again. Here, they're not even bothering using Timberwatch Elves because, well, to be honest, they will get more damage in that way, so I just take the whole thing. I don't even bother activating anything. Recumbent Bliss is fine. We're just going to drop that on a creature. Basically, we're still gaining life. This is basically like Infinite Fogs with the life gain plan. We're taking 12 damage and gaining 8. And finally, the 51st card was our second Pestilence. Alright, let's drop that down, let's clean up the board. And basically we can start using all of our black sources to close this game out rather quickly. I'm not even going to let my opponent gain a life off of the Essence Warden here, because I do need to be conscious of I only have like 9 draw steps left. And as long as we don't basically use Pestilence for 11, we're basically going to be fine here. So we're just going to play the land, we're just going to basically run through, our opponent's just skipping their turn, and then we're using the technique of tap all of our black sources all at once, spam click the Pestilence to do as much damage as possible, regain our life, and we do it again. Tap all of our black sources, ping our opponent for as much as we can, and then we're going to stack all of our life gains, and then we're just going to use the Pestilences again to finally win the game with 7 cards left in our library. We'll see it all the way to the end, and there we go. We did it. Alright, let's jump on to game number 2. We get to do that all over again. So, going into game number 2, let's see. Because we're down a little bit on time, I decided to bring in the Aura Gnarlids. I'm basically not really afraid of any kind of removal. So that is a way of closing out the game a lot quicker. It's also really good at blocking a lot of their guys. So we are definitely going to do that. And I'm going to take out some of the, basically 2 of the desires. Since a lot of their guys are just 1/1s, it's not going to make a huge difference. Our Aura Gnarlids are going to be able to block more in the long run. And so let's see. I also took out one of the enchantments that go on our lands. Basically, I'm not really afraid of any kind of land destruction, so we don't need the Shroud, and this is the harder one to cast out of the other ones, out of all 3 of the 2-drop ones. So yeah, we're basically just bringing in 3 Aura Gnarlids to speed up the clock a little bit, and as good blockers. Alright. We will take a look at our opening hand. And let's see. This is very borderline. Since we're on the draw, there is the possibility of keeping it, especially since we have the Fertile Ground, and that will basically unlock our hand. I would normally ship this one back, but let's see how risky I was. I did ship it back. Good. I wasn't that risky when I played this. This is a great hand for a mulligan to 6. So we're basically going to have all the 3 of the 4 mana sources our deck needs to operate. Hobble is going to be able to redraw. Abundant Growth can redraw. Face Fetters can at least lock down one of the +X guys in case we don't find anything else. So yeah, we'll go ahead and keep this one. Take a look at our top card. Land. I'm going to send that to the bottom since we don't have anything that costs 4 at the moment. And let's get into it. Now, Sentinel is probably the creature we were hoping not to see there. Basically, it means that they're going to be getting on the beats early. But there's not much we can do about that. Yeah, here we're basically just going to play a tapped land and get our Abundant Growth out. We're putting it on to the Blossoming Sands. The reason why is we want as many black sources as possible, and this is increasing our black source count. We have the Pestilence now, so things are looking pretty good. I don't want to play this until we have at least 5 mana. Because they played the Huntmaster, things can get dicey pretty quickly. It means they can really flood their board. And as you can see, I did hobble the Elvish Vanguard, mainly because we couldn't get rid of the Huntmaster. There was potential for the Elvish Vanguard to get out of hand very quickly, especially if our opponent was able to find any one of the cards that allows them to draw extra elves. They had enough mana to really make it big. This was the safest play, even though we did end up taking 5. Our opponent just has an Elvish Mystic, that's fine. We do have to fade one more draw step. So here, gonna drop down an Abundant Growth. This does give us 3 black sources, so 2 to play it, and 1 to wipe up all the little guys. And this also means that we can play an untapped source to play our Aura Gnarlid down for blocking purposes. It'll make it much less likely for our opponent to attack with their Huntmaster at the very least. And in fact, they did no attacks at all, so basically we're just going to drop our planes down, we're going to get our Pestilence, and at worst, we're going to clean up all the 1/1s. So we're just going to do that now, just to prevent our opponent from having Priest of Titania active next turn. And it looks like our opponent has a Timberwatch Elf. Thankfully, that's not going to be online when we go to use our Pestilence, and they didn't have any enchantment removal. Our opponent did have to mulligan down to 6 as well, so they don't have a plethora of cards either. So we're just going to wipe out the board. We don't want to give the Timberwatch a chance to untap. And we're also going to get rid of the Huntmaster with an extra activation. Basically, these 2 cards are going to be on the battlefield for the rest of the game, and currently I can't attack past that, and since I am down on time, I do want to win quicker. So basically, I am going to play the Crystallization on their Elvish Vanguard, since our Pestilence will be able to wipe out anything else. And we're just going to get in for some damage. Basically, our game plan right now is to just swing 2 more times and win it from there. There's no reason not to use the Kruphix's Insight, just to make sure we're playing correctly. And our opponent wasn't able to find anything, so we just go for our last attack, and we do win the game. Ooh, managed to take down Elves, long and grindy, and our opponent did play rather fast, so we were down a little bit on the clock. But we did manage to go 4-0 so far, so I will see you guys back in round 5.